Why, hello there, and welcome back. This is the Commoner President Project, also the Daydreamer Reads to His Son of the Federalist Papers. I hope in the future we'll get into other kinds of political commentary, poetry. It's a blend of hopefully inspirational accounts, art even, but also as someone who is trying to be, and philosophy. But as someone who's trying to be more eloquent, more educated, who's trying to translate my speech patterns from that of a layman, an ordinary person, and anybody, I have a bachelor's degree in creative writing and a minor in film production. I did not take political science or law, or criminal justice or any of those things. I have a sensitivity to corruption. I have a sensitivity to an impersonal and unjust system. I think it is easy to see the world through that lens as someone in the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. And so unfortunately I do come into I come into this discussion of the Federalist Papers with a bias. But I do want to say that I notice that there is also a bias on the other side. Sometimes, I run into these little back and forths on social media about certain aspects of the interpretation of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and now, even now, just getting started, only 3 essays into the Federalist Papers, I'm getting into these spats about the amendments and what was the intended meaning of the amendments. And my first interpretations of the Federalist Papers, as an example, Federalist No.3, where John Jay talks about the duty of the federal government to limit war as a way to safeguard the people, limit wars that we get into. But I think that that's an example that he's mentioning. I don't think that that's the key. That's the key way in which he wants to address this issue. If you can address this issue, then everything else underneath it can be addressed the same way. And he goes on to explain that the federal government could sort of be a collection of the best men, the most diplomatic, the most clear-headed. These are the people who are just going to they're going to be the cooler heads in the situation when mediating between states and on behalf of the varied states to the rest of the world. And I feel like when you're talking about national security issues, I think that it is implicit that we're talking about gross imbalances to the people, which should be served, given that it's through their consent that the government has any power at all. So we're talking about viewing what determines life, liberty, and prosperity for the people. And it's clear that is that these key markets like housing and energy and healthcare and education, and food and so I think it's clear from the Declaration of Independence to the way that the Constitution is structured to the way in which these Federalist Papers are being written that so much of the context coded into the writing is revolutionary. At its heart, it is revolutionary. It is rejecting. It is rejecting concentrated authority and concentrated power. It is rejecting this. Okay. Now, I want to see if this holds because we've got 85 essays approximately to get through, but I believe it will. That's my thesis going, and I believe it will. And I know that, especially as of someone who is a creative writer, that it is possible for writing to be perceived as abstract, and it is possible for it to be interpreted in the lens that anyone chooses, including a foundation of thinkers that want to mislead people who are perhaps less discerning in how they interpret rhetoric, literature, subtext, everything. And that's not to say that I have the final say on how to interpret the minds of these men, but they are scholars as much as they are men of law, as much as they are revolutionaries. And there is an underdog kind of spirit to what they're saying that I think I think is a part of the Brooklyn identity, growing in the shadow of Manhattan. I think, come on, buddy. I'm here taking care of my son. So I think that, did you get spooked? You get spooked, buddy? Yeah, I'm right here, man. Come on. Sorry, he was. Let's time to watch some numbers. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'm doing this while taking care of my son during the day. I'm able to spend some time. Anyway, okay. Let's get started. All right. This is Federalist 4. Okay, Federalist 4, number 4. The same subject continues concerning dangers from foreign force and influence. For the Independent Journal, Wednesday, November 7th, 1787. J. To the people of the state of New York. My last paper assigned several reasons why the safety of the people would be best secured by union against the danger it may be exposed to by just causes of war given to other nations. And those reasons show that such causes would not only be more rarely given, but would also be more easily accommodated by national government than either by the state government or the proposed little confederacies. But the safety of the people of America against dangers from foreign force depends not only on their forbearing to give just causes of war to other nations, but also on their placing and continuing themselves in such a situation as not to invite hostility or insult. For it need not be observed that there are pretended as well as just causes of war. It is true, however disgraceful it may be to human nature, that nations in general will make war whenever they have a prospect of getting anything by it. Nay, absolute monarchs will often make war when their nations are to get nothing by it, but for the purposes and objects merely personal, such as thirst for military glory, revenge, or for personal affronts, ambition, or private the Bush family. These guys, commentary. This guy's talking about Bush. He's talking about Bush. He's talking about Trump. He's talking about... Oh, man. That's why they called it, dude. They saw this shit. Oh, my God. Fucking John Jay He saw history, man. He saw it. They experienced it. They saw it. It is true, however disgraceful it may be to human nature, that nations in general will make war whenever they have a prospect of getting anything by it. Nay, absolute monarchs will often make war when their nations are to get nothing by it. But for the purposes and objects merely personal, such as thirst for military glory, revenge, for personal affronts, ambition, or private compacts to aggrandize or support their particular families or partisans, these, and a variety of other motives, which affect only the mind of the sovereign, often lead him to engage in wars not sanctified by justice or the voice and interests of his people, but independent of these inducements to war, which are more prevalent in absolute monarchies, but which well deserve our attention. There are others which affect nations as often as kings, and some of them will, on examination, be found to grow out of our relative situation and circumstances. With France and with Britain, we are rivals in the fisheries, and can supply their markets cheaper than they can themselves, notwithstanding any efforts to prevent it by bounties on their own, or duties on foreign fish. With them and with most other European nations, we are rivals in navigation and the carrying trade, and we shall deceive ourselves if we suppose that any of them will rejoice to see it flourish. For as our carrying trade cannot increase without in some degree diminishing theirs, it is more their interest and will be more their policy to restrain than to promote it. In the trade to China and India we interfere with more than one nation, inasmuch as it enables us to partake in advantages which they had in a manner monopolized, and as we thereby supply ourselves with commodities which we use to purchase from them. The extension of our own commerce in our own vessels cannot give pleasure to any nations who possess territories on or near this continent, because the cheapness and excellence of our productions, added to the circumstances of vicinity, and the enterprise and address of our merchants and navigators, will give us a greater share in the advantages which those territories afford, than consist with the wishes or policy of their prospective sovereigns. Spain thinks it convenient to shut the Mississippi against us on one side, and Britain excludes us from the St. Lawrence on the other. Nor will either of them permit the other waters which are between them and us to become the means of mutual intercourse and traffic. From these and such like considerations, which might, if consistent with prudence, be more amplified and detailed, it is easy to see that jealousies and uneasiness may gradually slide into the minds and cabinets of other nations, and that we are not to expect that they should regard our advancement in union and power and consequence by land and by sea with an eye of indifference and composure. The people of America are aware that inducements to war may arise out of these circumstances, as well as from others not so obvious at present, and that whenever such inducements may find a fit time and opportunity for operation, pretenses to color and justify them will not be wanting. Wisely, therefore, do they consider union and a good national government as necessary to put and keep them in such a situation as, instead of inviting war, will tend to repress and discourage it. The situation consists in the best possible state of defense and necessarily depends on the government, the arms, and the resources of the country. As the safety of the whole is the interest of the whole, and cannot be provided for without government, either one or more, or many, let us inquire whether one good government is not, relative to the object in question, more competent than any other given number whatever. One government can collect and avail itself of the talents and experience of the ablest men, in whatever part of the Union they may be found. It can move on uniform principles of policy. It can harmonize, assimilate, and protect the several parts and members, and extend the benefit of its foresight and precautions to each. In the formation of treaties, it will regard the interest of the whole, and the particular interests of the parts as connected with that of the whole. It can apply the resources and power of the whole to the defense of any particular part, and that more easily and expeditiously than state governments or separate confederacies can possibly do. For want of concert and unity of system, it can place the militia under one plan of discipline, and by putting their efforts in a proper line of subordination to the chief magistrate, will, as it were, consolidate them into one corps, and thereby render them more efficient than if divided into 13 or into 3 or 4 distinct independent companies. Okay. Commentary. I love how he uses whole over and over and over and over again. People want to talk about, like they don't like the word collectivism. They don't like the word union. They don't like the word, you know what I'm saying, that seems to be against the primacy of the individual. And yet none of this is possible without a holistic view. Just want to like underscore that. These guys, so far, are talking about we. All of us. Back to copy. What would the militia of Britain be if the English militia obeyed the government of England? If the Scotch militia obeyed the government of Scotland, and if the Welsh militia obeyed the government of Wales? Suppose an invasion. Would those three governments, if they agreed at all, be able, with all their respective forces, to operate against the enemy so effectively as the single government of Great Britain would? We have heard much of the fleets of Britain, and the time may come, if we are wise, when the fleets of America may engage attention. But if one national government had not so regulated the navigation of Britain as to make it nursery for seamen, if one national government had not called forth all the national means and materials for forming fleets, their prowess and their thunder would never have been celebrated. Let England have its navigation and fleet. Let Scotland have its navigation and fleet. Let Wales have its navigation and fleet. Let Ireland have its navigation and fleet. Let those 4 of the constituent parts of the British Empire be under 4 independent governments. It is easy to perceive how soon they would each dwindle into comparative insignificance. Apply these facts to our own case. Leave America divided into 13, or, if you please, into 3 or 4 independent governments. What armies could they raise and pay? What fleets could they ever hope to have? If one was attacked, would the others fly to its succor and spend their blood and money in its defense? Would there be no danger of their being flattered into neutrality by its specious promises, or seduced by a too great fondness for peace to decline hazarding their tranquility and present safety for the sake of neighbors, of whom perhaps they have been jealous, and whose importance they are content to see diminished? Although such conduct would... commentary. I like how he mentions jealousy, because what happens between the red states and the blue states seems very much like that, especially when you factor in that religion takes the place of the kind of service that red state governments need to be performing for their people. No, they rely on churches to do all of the charity work, when in fact many of these churches grow so big and gloated on their power that it's any wonder that Christians still use Christ as their mascot. when in reality these people need houses, they need good jobs, they need good energy grids, they need prospects, they need horizons, they need better incentives, and they need democracy. They keep being stuck with their incumbents, unable to see themselves reflected in their policies, because of how the media grooms them to abolish any sort of disruptive competition. But anyway, I digress there. Back to copy. Although such conduct would not be wise, it would nevertheless be natural. The history of the states of Greece and of other countries abounds with such instances, and it is not improbable that what has so often happened would, under similar circumstances, happen again. But admit that they might be willing to help the invaded state or confederacy. How, and when, and in what proportion shall aids of men and money be afforded? Who shall command the allied armies, and from which of them shall he receive his orders? Who shall settle the terms of peace, and in case of disputes, what empire shall decide between them and compel acquiescence? Various difficulties and inconveniences would be inseparable from such a situation, whereas one government, watching over the general and common interests, and combining and directing the powers and resources of the whole, would be free from all these embarrassments and conduce far more to the safety of the people. But whatever may be our situation, whether firmly united under one national government or split into a number of confederacies, certain it is that foreign nations will know and view it exactly as it is, and they will act toward us accordingly. If they see that our national government is efficient and well administered, our trade prudently regulated, our militia properly organized and disciplined, our resources and finances discreetly managed, our credit reestablished, our people free, contented, and united, they will be much more disposed to cultivate our friendship than provoke our resentment. If, on the other hand, they find us either destitute of an effectual government, each state doing right or wrong, as to its rulers may seem convenient, or split into 3 or 4 independent and probably discordant republics or confederacies, one inclining to Britain, another to France, and the third to Spain, and perhaps played off against each other by 3, what a poor pitiful figure will America make in their eyes? How liable would she become not only to their contempt, but to their outrage? And how soon would dear bought experience proclaim that when a people or family so divided, it never fails to be against themselves? Yes, indeed. Commentary. So, look, he's talking about unity. So how are you going to have the federal government in league with Putin, California going by themselves to Brazil, New York going by themselves to Puerto Rico? Meanwhile, the federal government is in Puerto Rico taking over their beaches. You have National Guards being traded from red states over into blue states under hostile arrangement. You have all this divide. The federal government, in its unique ability to play the quarterback for the entire nation, is instead creating hostility and divides everywhere. If we were to go by John Jay's essays alone, we would see in Trump an absolute debacle. He is an embodiment of a long history of negligence, recklessness, and sabotage from people. I'm not even going to just say Republicans, because you have to imagine that at any point in time, a proper political party so organized to properly support the people would have seen this and taken advantage of whatever grievances had been manufactured at that time across the country, united those on the ground by talking to the people and organizing and such, and then they would get. It just seems to me that for them to not fight much harder, it's because there was a benefit. There was a benefit, or there was a culture established that looked the other way, that accepted the reinterpretations of what was originally intended. These people did not study, didn't do their homework, didn't really get involved for the people. They did it because it was a career choice, an opportunity to make money and aggrandize themselves, create opportunities for themselves after they left office. But it was not because it was the right thing to do. It was not because the best men had been chosen. I just can't see how you can begin to study this and start to take this stuff seriously and then tell yourself, like, if I wanted to close my eyes and put my finger almost anywhere so far in the essays that I've written, I'm going to see common sense. This is not a country that is against the people. These are not the founding thoughts of folks that I have to worry about and think that they wanted the oppression of their people. This so far is the kind of strategy and certainty of purpose and clarity and eloquence that that we want to hear, perpetuated throughout time by the people that we choose to go forth from our districts and represent our cause, except that our logic and our culture on the ground has been divided such that I cannot properly say I speak for my neighbor. Social media has taken our common cause and divided us into entirely separate worlds of understanding. The internet has done this. Social media has done this. It was originally wonderful, but I think it has been corrupted just within, I don't know, 2 generations or so, maybe probably less. I would say probably a solid 30 years. And now we are all so much more divided. And I can't say that I could correctly describe what another New Yorker is going through, let alone another Brooklynite, let alone another person that is in my neighborhood, with fair certainty so as to represent who they are. But one thing that I can do is I can talk to these people. I can talk to these people to know them. I can literally walk outside and I can talk to them. And that is something that the internet cannot take away from any of us. That is how we get back to the common defense. That is how we get back to the general welfare and the common good. But it's going to take folks who are willing to do that work in every part of this country, linking their consciousness, linking their determination, and becoming the kind of people who can get out in front of audiences, in front of their neighbors, and certainly in front of the cameras to say these things, and to say them better than I can say them now. And God knows it's going to take a couple of years of rigging my subconscious to understand this common sense, because I know that under pressure I might struggle, I might buckle, I might get a little bit distracted, I might forget what I'm trying to say, but that's now, not in a year. Not in a year. All right. So far, I'm excited. This is interesting work, an interesting study, and an interesting collection of essays. And when people have talked about the Federalist Papers before, man, they treated it like it was jargon, like it was difficult to get through, like it was a slog, or like something that maybe implicated that it was sort of like legalese, that it was going to be hard to appreciate. I'll give you an example, one last one before we go. Today I was arguing about the Second Amendment, and I was saying that in the context of the Revolution, the Second Amendment, which clearly mentions how a well-regulated militia is necessary to ensure a free state, sort of justifies, I'm paraphrasing, the right to keep and bear arms by the people. And what I am being told by conservatives on social media is that it is only regarding the individual right of conservatives, barring no context whatsoever. They are convinced that the only thing that the Second Amendment has to deal with is individual rights, when the necessary part of that statement is within the context of saying that the states have to be able to resist a federal army that has lost its way, okay? A federal army that is compelled to descend upon any given state. The state militias guarantee the rights of the states to defend themselves. We do not have that. We have individual gun rights, but we do not have the regulation around them, the well-regulation around them that ensures that they are there for a purpose, which is to arm the population in the event that the federal government has lost its freaking compass. And the conservatives don't want to think about that, because that would mean that we are considered to be a whole, and that as a whole we hold the government accountable to one specific aim of criteria, which is the general welfare. That context is lost. It is lost behind the lies of individualism for its own sake. And because of that lie, I believe it has directly resulted in the kind of detachment of context and understanding that has resulted in this in America leading by far in mass shootings and tragic gun violence around the country over the course of our history. Now, a precedent within the last, 5 years has been overturned. They used to see gun regulation as a matter of state rights and has turned it over to the individual. And this, of course, is in concurrence with the Trump regime's. So simultaneously, he's driving the country into a frenzy, along with any sort of foreign influence on the social media space and the cultural space. And then on top of that, they're spending a lot of time to hasten the divides between people, putting their finger on race. Mayor-elect Mamdani's rise into office is part of this, right? They want someone that they can attack. And so I think we when you start to see what's happening, I don't think you can unsee it. We needed a well-regulated militia. We don't have it. What we have is citizens with guns, and it's happening in New York at a clip that no one's talking about. But they have, in some ways, pulled back some of the regulations on concealed carry and concealed carry permits. And now a lot of folks are getting their gun licenses, but I worry that the people that are rushing to get their gun licenses are not the kind of people that should be having guns, And if there is ever a wide call for a purge, a lot of good people are not going to be prepared. I don't think it'll get that crazy. That is some crazy stuff. I honestly don't believe that Trump has quite that power or quite that influence in New York for it to happen. The thing is how many people will be as lambs to the slaughter in the event that even some of that dark request is carried out, if ever it is issued, right? I mean, we are in a country that regularly sports a number of cultish uprisings with deadly effects. Things that you would never think are possible happen to people that were considered sane, rational. It's just that they're in a fugue. I don't want to extend this video forever. God knows, there's so much I can talk about, and I don't think I've had an opportunity to reflect these concerns. But these are the things that I'm thinking about as I see how far our rhetoric has come from the presence of mind that our forefathers had. We're a bloated nation that has lost the plot and stepped away from the very necessary work that the federal government needs to do to keep everybody united and on the same page. And I'm not talking about propaganda, but I am talking about values. Okay. All right. That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. More of the Federalist Papers in this series on the way. 8 times 10 equals 80.